Hi, Paul.
Righty tighty, lefty loosey. I'm Paul, and I would like to thank Randy and Maria and all of you for your presence tonight. Also, special shout out to Creaky Stool and Downstairs Distinctive Laugh. Tonight I will be reading, this is a continuation reading of a short story whose working title is Synchrotone. And I had started reading it at the last event, so tonight I will be continuing it. And so, as a recap, the story is set in northern Mexico in a dystopian future in which climate change and war have devastated Latin America. As a result, the flow of refugees northward has become so overwhelming that the US military deployed drones to deter the migrants. These drones are kind of like huge metal insects with AI, and left to their own devices over the years, they became extremely violent because that was the most optimal way to meet their objective. So that's the setting, and the story is told from the point of view of a white American guy who's kind of washed up in this area of Mexico somehow, and he has been using his computer hacking skills to fuel a kind of self-destructive drug addiction. We learn that this guy goes by the name of David Gustafson, who is famous for leaking the details of the drone program to the US public. And at the start of the story, this guy gets kidnapped by a group led by an elderly woman known as Yaya, who we learn is this kind of renegade figure who's famous for having helped the migrants in decades past, before the drones showed up and terrorized everyone. So they drive him out to the desert, and Yaya reveals that they've somehow disabled and captured one of these drones. And so that's about where we left off last time, and I'm just going to rewind a little bit, and I hope you enjoy. Yaya scowled down at me, her face in shadow. Estúpido. That thing's alive, I groaned. It could be phoning its friends. It isn't. Why don't you shoot the battery? Because, she said, as to a child who didn't want to go to bed. You are going to jailbreak it, David Gustafson. You are going to make it do as we say. And then you will catch me more. The genius of compassionate interdiction was not that the drones would evolve to meet their objective in self-directed ways. It was that they would do this in a headless mode, completely isolated from any communication or oversight. Their actions would go unseen, their existence plausibly deniable. That was what made them the answer to the refugee problem that the American public, divided as it was across political ideology, was silently unanimous in wanting to go away. Because while the influx of hundreds of thousands of impoverished migrants had functioned as a long-running political issue, the influx of tens of millions was unimaginable, and it needed to not be happening. That stroke of genius was borne out by how the leak of the program's details did nothing to stop it. A few scapegoats were put out to pasture, a congressional committee announced, and then gradually forgotten by a frantic news cycle. After all, the violence predicted by David Gustafson was purely theoretical. No one had witnessed it happen. Under a different code name, the program powered ahead. In this sense, David Gustafson was not the name of someone who'd mattered after all. I was hunched over the portable console in my lap, its dim glow our only light source besides the milky sky of the exclusion zone at night. I'd usually hacked from the confines of Yaya's RV-turned-command center, but for tonight's operation, we were on radio silence. With communication limited to hushed words and flashlight signals, Yaya had gathered everyone on the cold ground in the center of our wagon circle of trucks. "Here one comes," I whispered, translating the console's textual data as it streamed upward on the screen. Neither Yaya nor Luis replied from where they crouched behind me. I felt the barrel of Luis's Smith & Wesson pistol press harder into the back of my head. But we'd done this enough times now, I knew it just meant he was excited. In duller moments, he'd even share his cigarettes, my only semblance of an addiction recovery program. I could have used a cigarette right now. The console informed me it was -5 degrees Celsius, and despite the gloves Yaya had found me, my digits had started to tingle as I jammed them into the keyboard. "It's a lung," I reported. That was good. Half a kilometer out in the dark, our own crippled drone was lying in wait, broadcasting the siren song I'd instructed. Repairs needed. Threat level low. Yaya's fire team lay concealed around it in a semicircle of tarp-covered pits, no doubt the most tense of all. We tried this op 7 times in the 5 weeks since I'd managed to jailbreak the drone. For our efforts, Yaya had lost 9 soldiers killed, with another 4 too maimed to ever fight again. Meanwhile, we destroyed 3 drones and converted none. My virus was looking like a one-hit wonder. After our most recent failure, Yaya had sat me down in the RV, coolly leaning on her rifle. "Pinky, you and I have a problem." Just then, Luis had burst in, covered in someone else's blood, eyes fixed wildly on me. She'd put a hand on his shoulder, and he'd seethed inches from my face. I'd been prepared for them to cut their losses and shoot me. But funnily enough, I wanted to keep living now. I wanted to solve the puzzle. Now I squinted at the console. Its holding position. That was new behavior. Luis cursed. They learned its bait. His boss said nothing, always the paragon of calm. Then I realized she was holding in a cough. We waited. My mind spun its old gears, long rusted, but apparently never fallen off. "Yaya," I whispered. "Tell me again how you captured the drone." Somehow that thing had remained alive, but with its memory totally wiped. No wonder it had been receptive to my virus while the others weren't. "Kayate, Pinky, we've been through this," Yaya rasped. "It came through the roof of the bus. Soldiers and their families trapped. We fought for our lives." Whenever I pushed for detail on this moment, she'd become extra gruff and stormed off to some more important matter. But now I had her trapped. "How, Yaya? You shot it?" Her voice trembled on the cusp of the cough. No, it was too fast, too close. We used whatever we had in our hands. Everyone did. Soldiers, niños, old crones like me. Los ratones mataron a la serpiente. Luis pressed the gun harder on purpose this time. I was pushing my luck. I glanced at the console. Our quarry still hesitated. I doubled down. We have to reproduce those conditions, I said. After the target lands, radio your team to get as close as they can to it. They don't love me that much, Pinky. It might be the only... I stopped. The target was retreating in our direction. I reopened my mouth to speak, but the only sound that came was a buzzing whine from the sky. My legs flailed into nothingness. The impact had sent me airborne. I hit the frozen dirt, clutching the console like a child hugging a doll for protection. Flashlight beams leap into the dark. They converge on the speaker drone in our midst, reared up like a mantis. It strikes down 2 men in its reach, then lunges after another, working with the cold efficiency of farm equipment. Ragged figures scramble in all directions. Screams and isolated pops of gunfire punctuate the night, which lights up as a flare soars blood red into the sky. In the quivering glow, I catch the sight of Luis pushing Yaya under the RV as she shouts commands nobody hears. His eyes dart to me, his prisoner, then away toward bigger problems. All I feel is numb. Everyone looks like an actor in a movie I've seen too many times. Reading the script, I realize this is my moment to escape. Maybe steal a truck. Maybe die behind a crystal house, after all. Then, as the slaughter of her people commences, I see Yaya's face. She isn't the unflappable hero from the hollow memes, nor the surly general I've come to know. Instead, I recognize who I glimpsed when pressing her about the attack on the bus. Just a frightened woman trying to survive. Yaya, a man screams. It's my voice. I've never raised it before, and even in the chaos, her attention turns at the sound of someone she doesn't know. With her eyes on me, I pick up a rock and chuck it at the drone. She understands, and in an instant, the general is back. I expected her to copy me, but Yaya does me one better. Before Luis can stop her, she's pushed past him and scurried out into the open faster than I've ever seen her move. Howling like a wild animal, she whirls the butt of her rifle in the air and charges the drone. Luis comes lunging just in time to hold her back. But at the sight of their old leader giving her life, her troops suddenly rally. Screams ring out once more, and this time they're furious. Rocks, shovels, tent poles, and helmets rain down at the drone from all directions. I come out of my trance and fumble with my console. As Yaya's people close in on the drone from all directions, it falters, hunches low, and lies still. I transmit the virus. It's ours, I say softly. Even if I shouted, nobody would hear me over the crashes and insane cries as the men and women who minutes ago had been about to die unleash their rage on the unbothered drone, now awaiting my instructions. How did we catch it? Yaya asked me the next day. After the fight had ended, she'd gone without a word to the cab of her truck, where she'd slept for 17 hours. I could tell she'd come straight here after waking. I paused my work programming the drone's new objectives and rubbed my eyes. I hadn't slept at all. We found a bug. I thought they learned from mistakes, said Luis. He'd sat smoking next to me most of the day, sharing the last of his cigarettes, gun in his holster. He had a sister and brother in Kentucky. Last heard from 3 years ago. They were Bengals fans. It's a bug in the learning framework itself, I said. With enough stimuli all at once, their context overloads. As they try to make sense of the chaos, prior knowledge and objectives get dropped. They are reborn. Luis nodded to himself. Yaya was frowning, which meant she was happy. So we get in their face and dance around and they get confused, she said. Then your virus works. Our virus, I said. She looked at me. What now? I asked her. She coughed into her handkerchief. Now we get more. She turned to lead us to it. Oh, Pinky, she added. Teach our new drone to dance. I'm not doing that again.